The doctor's office was quiet in the way that rooms were quiet when they had just delivered something irreversible. Kwon Tae-young sat in the chair across from the desk and looked at the folder in his hands and said nothing for a long time. The doctor, a man he had chosen specifically because he was the best in Seoul, and because the best in Seoul understood discretion, waited with the particular patience of someone who had delivered this kind of news before and knew that the first minutes after it belonged entirely to the person receiving it. 6 months. The condition was rare and aggressive and had been developing quietly, the doctor explained, for longer than the symptoms suggested. The treatment options were limited. The prognosis, with the current state of conventional medicine, was what it was. Tae-young looked at the folder. He had walked into rooms that terrified other men his entire adult life and had never once flinched. He had built an empire from nothing through 15 years of decisions that lesser men would not have had the nerve to make. He had never in his life encountered something he could not negotiate, intimidate, or outmaneuver. He could not outmaneuver this. He thanked the doctor, straightened his jacket, walked out through the corridor and into the elevator and down to the car where his driver was waiting. He got in. His driver asked where to. Home, he said. He looked out the window at Seoul moving past and felt, for the first time in 15 years, completely alone. Before we go any further, if you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell. New stories every week in this one. This one is different from anything I've told before. He told no one. This was not a decision he made consciously. It was simply what happened, the way that certain things settled into their natural shape without deliberate choosing. He went back to the office the following morning. He attended meetings. He made decisions. He was, to everyone around him, exactly who he had always been. At night, he sat in his Hanamdong residence and looked at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows and took stock of his life with the specific clarity that a deadline produced. What he found was not entirely surprising. He had known, in the abstract way that powerful people knew things about the people around them without examining the knowledge too closely, that his world was constructed of a certain kind of loyalty. The loyalty of people who needed him, needed his protection, his money, his name. He had considered this arrangement satisfactory. He had never examined whether satisfactory was the same as enough. He started examining it now. He tested his brother Tae-jin first, casually, over lunch, mentioning that the entertainment division might need significant restructuring. He watched Tae-jin's face move through the information and found, underneath the composed response, something that looked like panic wearing the costume of concern. It was not Tae-young he was worried about. It was the division, his position in it, his salary. He tested his sister Yeon-jae by mentioning he was considering consolidating some of the business holdings. Her response came through their mother, which told him two things simultaneously: that Yeon-jae had immediately reported the conversation upward, and that his mother was paying closer attention to the estate than he had fully appreciated. He did not test his mother directly. He didn't need to. He had always known what she was, had loved her anyway, the way you loved complicated things that were yours. But love and clarity were not mutually exclusive, and he was seeing very clearly now. He had 6 months. He was not going to spend them pretending. On a Saturday morning 8 weeks after the diagnosis, he did something he had not done in 12 years. He took the subway. It was not a dramatic decision. He simply woke up that morning with the specific restlessness of a man who could not bear to be in his own life for another day and needed to be somewhere that didn't know his name. He put on clothes he had bought specifically for this, plain, unremarkable, the kind of outfit that disappeared in a crowd. He left without telling his security detail. He walked to the nearest station and got on the first train that came. He ended up in Mangwon by accident. Got off one stop early, decided to walk rather than go back, followed a street that was louder and warmer than the ones he usually moved through. The weekend market appeared around a corner, small, unhurried, the kind of place that existed for the people who lived in the neighborhood rather than for anyone passing through. He moved through it slowly with his hands in his pockets and felt the specific disorientation of being nobody. No one looked at him twice. No one adjusted their posture or their expression when he approached. He was simply a man in a market on a Saturday morning, and the sensation of it was so foreign it was almost overwhelming. He stopped at a stall near the end of the row. The woman behind it was arranging jars with the focused attention of someone who took what she did seriously regardless of the scale of it. She was American, he could tell before she spoke, something in the way she moved, the particular ease of someone who had never learned to make herself smaller in public spaces. She looked up when he stopped. "You look lost," she said. Korean first, then English when she read his expression. "Or hungry. Either way, I can help with one of those." He looked at the stall. At the jars, the small handwritten signs, the samples arranged on a wooden board with the care of someone who believed they were worth presenting properly. "What is that?" he said, pointing at a jar of something dark and glossy. "Pepper jelly," she said. "Memphis recipe, my grandmother's. It'll change your life." Something about the confidence of the claim, entirely unperformed, stated as simple fact, made him look at her more carefully. "Much." He said. She told him. He paid. He started to leave. "You should try it before you go," she said. "I have samples." He stopped, turned back. She held out a small piece of bread with a spread of the jelly on it. He took it, ate it. He sat with the experience for a moment, locating the right description, the best thing he had eaten in years. Not because it was technically superior to the food his private chef prepared with imported ingredients and professional precision. Because it tasted like someone had made it for the love of making it, with no audience in mind, no performance involved. "Well," she said. "You were right," he said. "It changed my life." She laughed genuinely, the laugh arriving before she decided on it. "Come back next Saturday," she said. "I'll have the hot version ready." He walked away telling himself he wouldn't come back. He was back the following Saturday at 9:15. Her name was April. He found this out in the first 5 minutes of the second Saturday, when she handed him the hot version of the pepper jelly and asked if he was ready to have his life changed again. And he said his name was Jin, and she said hers was April, and somehow after that the conversation lasted an hour and a half, and he missed a meeting he had scheduled for 11 o'clock and did not particularly care. She had been in Seoul for 2 years, teaching English, running the stall on weekends, building something small and genuine in a neighborhood that had accepted her with the specific warmth of a community that valued showing up consistently over time. She talked about Memphis the way people talked about places that had made them, with the full, complicated love of someone who had left but carried it anyway. He listened. He asked questions. He told her small, true things about himself, not the real things, not yet, but things that were genuinely him rather than the Kwon that his world received. "What do you do, Jin?" she asked on the third Saturday. "Business," he said. "What kind?" "The complicated kind," he said. She looked at him for a moment with the expression of someone filing something away. "You don't have to tell me," she said, "but I want you to know I'm going to keep asking." "I know," he said. He found to his own surprise that he didn't mind. The rainy Saturday came in the 7th week. The market was half empty. Most of the regulars had stayed home. She was packing up early, alone, wrestling with a crate that was heavier than it looked. He took the other end without being asked. They carried it to her van in the rain and stood under the overhang afterward, both slightly wet, and she laughed at the absurdity of it, at the rain, at the two of them standing there with nowhere particular to be, and the laugh did something to him that he could not name. They got coffee from a pajang matcha and sat under the awning, and the rain came down around them, and they talked for 2 hours. Not about business or illness or family. About small things, real things. Walking home that evening, he understood something he had not understood before. This was the only place he was not dying, not literally. The diagnosis did not pause for Saturday mornings. But here, with her, he was simply a person in a city in the rain. The 6 months sat somewhere else when he was in her orbit. He couldn't explain it. He held it carefully. He called his doctor that evening and asked, for the first time since the diagnosis, about treatment options. He came back every Saturday for 6 weeks. He bought something from her stall each time, not always because he wanted the product, always because he wanted the conversation. The pepper jelly, a jar of hot sauce, a bag of seasoned pecans she had started making because 3 customers asked for them in the same week, and she had decided that was sufficient market research. She was unlike anyone in his world, not because she was naive, she wasn't. She was sharp and observant and occasionally said things with a precision that caught him off guard, the specific accuracy of someone who paid attention without announcing it. But she had absolutely no investment in impressing him. She talked to him the way she talked to the neighborhood grandmother 2 stalls down, and the university student who bought hot sauce every week without fail, like he was simply a person. Like that was enough to be interesting. He had forgotten what that felt like. He had been Kwon Tae-yong for so long, the name, the weight of it, the way rooms rearranged themselves when he entered, that he had lost track of where the name ended and the person began. Here, as Jin, the name was just a name. She wasn't reacting to anything except what he actually said and did in front of her. The experience was disorienting in a way that was becoming, slowly, the thing he looked forward to most. She told him about Memphis on the fourth Saturday, the food, the music, the specific quality of summer heat there that she still missed even in Seoul's hottest months. About her grandmother's kitchen, which had been the center of everything she understood about warmth and effort and the specific love that expressed itself through feeding people. "Is that why you do this?" he asked. "The stall, the jars." "Partly," she said. "Partly I just missed the food and figured other people might too." She paused. "And partly I needed something that was mine. Teaching is good, but this is mine." He looked at the stall, the careful arrangement of it, the handwritten signs, the samples presented with genuine care. "You built this yourself," he said. "Nothing," she said. "Started with 12 jars and a folding table." He nodded slowly. He understood building from nothing. He had just never seen it look quite like this small, this honest, this unconcerned with scale. "What do you do with the money?" he asked. She looked at him. "Mind your business, Jin," she said, and then laughed so he knew she wasn't serious. "I save it, I send some home, I'm building something." "What are you building?" She considered him for a moment. "Ask me again in a year," she said. He almost said, "I don't have a year." He didn't say that. He bought the pecans. He walked home thinking about the year he didn't have and the woman who was building something inside it anyway. This story is already something different. Hit that like button if you can feel it. It helps this channel reach more people and means more stories like this one. Let's keep going. His family noticed his absences on the 5th week. His mother noticed first. She always noticed first. It was one of her defining qualities, the vigilance of a woman who had built her entire life on the foundation of her son's power, and monitored that foundation the way you monitored something you understood could not be replaced. He had been missing Sunday dinners. His phone went unanswered on Saturday mornings. When he appeared at family events, he was different, present in a way he hadn't been, quieter in a way that was not his usual quiet. His usual quiet was the quiet of a man conserving energy for decisions. This was something else. She didn't have a word for it, and the absence of a word made her more unsettled than the thing itself. She asked Tae-jin to find out what was happening. Tae-jin, who had been monitoring his brother's behavior since the conversation about the entertainment division, started paying closer attention. He did not yet know about the diagnosis. Nobody did, but he knew the behavior pattern of a man whose priorities were shifting, and he knew that shifting priorities in Kwon Tae-yong meant shifting power, and shifting power was the one thing Tae-jin could not afford to be unprepared for. He hired someone to follow his brother on Saturday mornings. The report came back within 2 weeks. A market in Mangwon, a woman, an American. Every Saturday, same stall, same conversation, same hour and a half that Tae-yong spent being someone nobody in his world would have recognized. Tae-jin brought the report to his mother. His mother read it twice, set it down, looked at her son across the table with the expression she used when she had already decided something and was simply calculating the cleanest way to act on the decision. "Find out who she is," she said. "Everything." He told her about the diagnosis on a Sunday, not at the market. He texted the day before and asked if she would meet him somewhere, just to talk. She said yes without asking why, which was typical and which he had come to rely on without fully nomming the reliance. They met at a park near the Han River. He was in his Jin clothes, but something about him was different today. She saw it immediately, the specific quality of someone who had decided to put something down that they had been carrying alone. He told her everything. The condition, the timeline, the months of watching the people around him and reading what was actually there. He did not tell her about the organization yet. That was a different conversation and he was not ready for it. But the illness he gave her completely. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment, not the uncomfortable quiet of someone managing their reaction, just the quiet of someone genuinely sitting with what they had heard. Long have you been carrying this alone? She asked. Since the beginning, he said. She nodded, looked at the river. He waited for the sympathy that was really about her own discomfort. It didn't come. My aunt, she said. She's a retired oncologist, spent 20 years working with blood conditions, including experimental protocols for rare aggressive cases. She paused. She's in Atlanta now, but she still consults actively. Another pause. Can I send her your medical file? He looked at her. Not going to tell me I should have told someone sooner, he said. Would that help you? She said. No, he said. Then no, she said. Give me your file. He looked at the river for a moment. Something in his chest, braced since a hospital corridor 8 weeks ago, loosened slightly. April, he said. She said back. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. Thank me when my aunt says she can do something. They sat by the river for another hour, not talking about the illness, about other things. Small things. The particular way the Han River light moved in the late afternoon. A book she was reading. A memory he had of this city from when he was young, before he became what he became, when Seoul had been just a place he lived rather than a place he owned. He had not thought about that version of himself in years. She listened to him describe it with the attention she gave everything. Completely, unhurriedly, like the story was worth the full space it needed. He walked home in the early evening light and felt, quietly and without drama, like a person who was going to fight. He told her who he really was 3 weeks later, not because he had planned the timing, because she deserved to know before things went further. And things were going further. He was done conducting his life on the basis of what was convenient for him. They were at her apartment in Mangwon, the small one, warm and specific, decorated with the personality of someone who had made the most of limited space. Plants on the windowsill, a print on the wall she had bought from another market vendor, a kitchen that smelled like something she had been cooking all afternoon. He looked at it and thought, "This is the most honest room I have been in 15 years, he told her. His real name, the organization. The legitimate businesses and the operations that ran underneath them. The scale of what Kwon Tae-yong meant in Seoul to the people who knew the name. She listened with the stillness she brought to things that required it. When he finished, she looked at him for a long time. "Why are you telling me?" she said. "Because you are the only real thing in my life right now," he said. "And I'm not willing to let it sit on something false." She was quiet again. He waited for the fear, the withdrawal. The recalibration of everything she thought she knew about the man who bought pepper jelly on Saturday mornings. "Okay," she said. "Okay. I'm not going to pretend it's not a lot," she said. "It is. I need time to sit with it." She met his eyes. "But I'm not going anywhere tonight." He exhaled, long, quiet, the exhale of a man setting down something he had been carrying for 3 weeks. "Okay," he said. She stood up, went to the kitchen. "I made food," she said. "You should eat." He sat at her small kitchen table, the most honest room in 15 years, and she brought food and they ate together, and the city moved outside the window and neither of them needed to say anything else that night. Some things, he was learning, did not need to be resolved immediately. They just needed to be begun. April's aunt responded on a Thursday. The email was precise and unhurried, the communication of a woman who had spent decades delivering information to people who needed it clearly and without unnecessary softening. Dr. Patricia Washington had reviewed the medical file. She had seen the condition before, not often, but enough. She had worked with a treatment protocol developed over 8 years of research that had shown meaningful results in cases with this specific profile. She wanted to speak with Tae-yong's doctors directly. She believed there was a path. Tae-yong read the email 3 times. He had not used the word hope since the diagnosis. He had considered it a form of self-deception, the comfort of people who couldn't bear the weight of realistic assessment. He was a man who had always preferred the accurate thing over the comfortable thing. He used the word now. Quietly, privately, sitting alone in his Hanamdong residence with his phone in his hand and Seoul spread out below him. "Hope," he called April. She picked up on the second ring. He read her the email. She listened, and when he finished, she said, "I told you to wait before thanking me." "Still waiting," he said, "but I wanted you to know." A pause. "How do you feel?" she asked. He sat with the question honestly. "Like someone opened a window," he said, "in a room I had decided was sealed." She was quiet for a moment. "Good," she said, simply, like it mattered to her that this was true, Like his window being open was something she had a stake in. He had not had anyone in his life who had a genuine stake in his well-being in a very long time. He sat with the specific warmth of it and did not try to manage it or minimize it. "Thank you," he said. She said. "Ti-Yang," he said, still getting used to hearing his real name from her mouth. "My name is Ti-Yang." "Ti-Yang," she said. "You're welcome." We're deep in this story now. Hit that like button if you're feeling everything right along with him. Let's keep going. His mother moved on a Wednesday. She had assembled everything she needed, the report from Tijin's investigator. A full profile of April Washington assembled with the thoroughness that money bought, and the specific composure of a woman who had spent 30 years managing threats to her family's position and considered herself very good at it. She called April directly. April, to her credit, answered. And when his mother suggested they meet privately, just the two of them, a conversation between women, April said yes without hesitation, which his mother had not entirely expected, and which she interpreted, incorrectly, as a sign of naivety. They met at a hotel restaurant in Gangnam. His mother arrived first. She always arrived first. It was a power habit so deeply ingrained she was no longer conscious of it. She was composed and elegant, and when April walked in she assessed her in the specific way she assessed everything. Quickly, completely, filing the information before the other person had finished sitting down, April sat down, looked at her directly. Did not perform nervousness. His mother had expected nervousness. She recalibrated slightly. The conversation was elegant in the way that his mother's hostilities were always elegant, dressed in warmth, structured as concern, the kindness of someone who had decided to be generous in their cruelty. She told April that she understood something had developed between her and her son, that she appreciated April's warmth toward him, that she only wanted what was best for Ti-Yang, which was why she wanted to be honest. Then she made the offer. A sum of money, significant, the kind of number that acknowledged April was not naive about value. Assistance returning to America. Help establishing something there, if she wanted, the specific generosity of someone who wanted the person they were removing to feel handled rather than discarded. All of it contingent on April ending her relationship with Ti-Yang and leaving Seoul within 30 days. She finished, folded her hands, waited for the response she expected, the careful negotiation of someone deciding whether the number was right, or the tearful gratitude of someone who hadn't expected to be taken seriously. April looked at her for a long moment, then she said, "No." His mother blinked, just once. "I think if you consider." "I've considered," April said. Her voice was even. Not aggressive, just completely settled, the voice of a woman who had made her decision before she walked into the room and was not going to be moved from it. "The answer is no. My son's world is not. I want you to know something," April said. "I'm going to tell him about this conversation. Today, as soon as I leave here." She paused. "Not to cause problems, because that's the kind of person I am. He deserves to know what's happening around him." She stood, picked up her bag. "Thank you for the tea," she said, and walked out. She called him from the street outside the hotel. He picked up immediately. He had known she was meeting his mother. She had told him when his mother called, and he had spent the 2 hours of the meeting in his office doing work he could not concentrate on. "How bad?" he said. "She offered me money to leave Seoul," April said. "I said no. I told her I was going to tell you." A pause. "Are you okay?" He was quiet for a moment. He examined it honestly, not surprised. He was something more complicated than not surprised. He was tired. The specific tiredness of a man who had spent months seeing clearly and was now simply done pretending he hadn't. "Come over," he said. "I'll make dinner." "You cook," she said. "I'm learning," he said. She laughed. "I'll be there in 40 minutes. He called a family meeting the following week. He had thought carefully about how to do this. Not with rage, not with the performance of disappointment, just with the clarity that the past months had given him. He sat at the head of the table in the residence and looked at his mother, his brother, his sister, and told them the truth, all of it, the diagnosis first. He watched their faces, watched the information land and read, clearly and without ambiguity, what was underneath each response. His mother's expression moved through shock and then, almost immediately, into calculation. His brother's face showed something that was trying to be grief and was actually closer to assessment. His sister cried, genuinely, he thought, or close to it. She had always been the least strategic of them, which he had sometimes mistaken for depth. He told them about April, about what she meant to him, about the meeting his mother had arranged without his knowledge and what April had said in it and how she had handled it. His mother began to explain. He stopped her. "Not asking for an explanation," he said. "I'm telling you how things are." He looked at each of them in turn. "April stays. Her place in my life is not up for discussion, and it is not a negotiation." "Young," his mother said. "You have to understand a woman like that from nowhere with no understanding of what our family—" "A woman like that," he said quietly, "is the reason I called my doctor for the first time after the diagnosis and asked about treatment options. She is the reason I am sitting at this table instead of spending whatever time I have left making peace with dying." He paused. "You want to talk to me about what our family requires?" "I want to talk about what I have actually found." Table was very quiet. He looked at his brother. "I also think it's time we had an honest conversation about the roles each of you plays in the organization, what is earned and what is assumed." He let that sit. "Not today, but soon." Jin's jaw tightened. He said nothing. "Love you," Yang said. To all of them, because it was true and because he was done letting the complicated parts of things prevent him from saying the true parts. "But I am done managing this family at the expense of my own life. Whatever time I have, and I intend to have more of it than the doctor initially suggested, I'm spending it differently." He stood. "Dinner is on the table," he said. "We can talk about the rest later." Treatment required them to go to Atlanta. April's aunt wanted Yang under direct observation for the first phase, the most intensive part of the protocol, the part that required daily monitoring and adjustment. He arranged for his most trusted lieutenant to manage the organization in his absence. He told no one else where he was going. He packed a bag. April packed a bag. They left on a Tuesday morning. At the airport, she stood beside him in the line, just the two of them, no security, no entourage. And he looked at her and thought about the market in Mangwon and the pepper jelly and the rainy Saturday and the specific accumulation of small moments that had brought him to this departure gate with this woman beside him going somewhere neither of them had been together. "Nervous?" she asked. "About the treatment or the flight?" "Either." He considered it. "No," he said. "For the first time in months, no." She looked at him, smiled, the real one, the one that arrived before she decided on it. "Good," she said. They boarded. Seoul fell away below them and he looked down at it through the window. The city he had spent 15 years building power inside. The city that had given him everything he had asked of it and nothing he hadn't known to ask for, and felt something that was not quite goodbye and not quite relief. Something in between. The feeling of a man who was leaving something behind not because he was done with it, but because he needed to go somewhere else first in order to come back differently. April was reading beside him. He watched her for a moment, the ease of her, the complete absence of performance, the specific quality of a person who was simply themselves in every room they occupied. He reached over and took her hand. She looked up from her book. "Thank you," he said. "For all of it." She squeezed his hand. "We haven't finished yet," she said. "I know," he said. "That's what I'm thanking you for." Atlanta received them with heat and green, and the particular slowness of a southern city that had never seen the point of rushing. Dr. Patricia Washington met them at her home on the first morning, a woman in her late 60s with the bearing of someone who had spent decades in rooms where precision mattered and had never lost the habit. She shook Yang's hand, looked at him directly, asked him 3 questions about his symptoms that his Seoul doctors hadn't thought to ask. He answered all 3. She nodded. "We start Monday," she said. He looked at April. April looked at him. Something passed between them that needed no translation. "Monday," he said. The treatment was not easy. He had not expected it to be easy. He was not a man who comforted himself with optimistic projections, but the reality of it was still something he had to meet freshly each day. The protocol was intensive in the first phase, requiring daily clinic visits and a regimen that left him, on the hardest days, reduced to a version of himself that had nothing left to perform. No authority, no composure. Just a person in a difficult moment needing another person to be present. April was present, not in the hovering way, not with the performed caregiving of someone who needed him to see how much they were sacrificing. Simply present. She made food in the kitchen she borrowed from Dr. Washington's neighbor, simple things. the food you made for someone who needed sustenance rather than experience. She sat with him on the hard days without trying to fix the hardness. She talked about small things when that was what he needed, and about real things when he had the energy for them. On the worst night, the third week, when the treatment was at its most aggressive and he was awake at 2 in the morning, unable to find a comfortable position and unwilling to wake her, he heard her get up anyway. She appeared in the doorway of the bedroom, said nothing, just came and sat beside him and handed him a glass of water and stayed until the worst of it passed. He looked at her in the dark. "You should sleep," he said. "I will," she said. Later, he looked at the ceiling. "I was not a good man," he said. Not as confession, just as fact, the kind that surfaced at 2 in the morning when the defenses were down. For a long time, I told myself the organization was I told myself there were reasons. There are always reasons. She was quiet. "I don't know how to undo it," he said. "You probably can't undo most of it," she said, honestly, without softening it. "But you can decide what you do with whatever comes next." He looked at her. "That's it. That's the wisdom. That's it," she said. "I'm not a philosopher, Young. I make pepper jelly." He laughed, the laugh arriving before he decided on it, surprising him. She smiled. He felt the hard night loosen slightly around its edges. "Go to sleep," she said. "Stay," he said. She stayed. If this story has moved you, subscribe right now if you haven't already, hit that bell, and let's finish this together. By the second month, the numbers were moving. Dr. Washington delivered the update at the clinic on a Tuesday morning, the specific restraint of a scientist who had learned not to celebrate too early and was visibly working against the instinct. The treatment was responding. The markers were shifting in the right direction. She wanted to continue the protocol for 2 more months and reassess, but she used the word trajectory, and he understood from the way she said it that the trajectory was good. He called his lieutenant in Seoul, gave instructions calmly and completely, and hung up. Then he sat in the clinic waiting room and looked at the wall for a long time. April came out of the consultation room behind him. She had been asking Dr. Washington follow-up questions, which was typical. She always had follow-up questions, and found him sitting there looking at nothing. She sat beside him. "Good news tends to hit harder than people expect," she said. "Not," he started, stopped. "I had accepted it," he said. "The 6 months. I had made my peace with it, and now you have to unmake your peace with it," she said. "Yes. That's harder," she said. "Accepting something is one decision, hope is every day." He looked at her. "How do you know that?" "My father was sick when I was 17, she said. "Different condition, he made it." She paused. "I watched my mother choose hope every single morning for 2 years. I know what it costs." He had not known this about her. He held it carefully. "She sounds like someone worth knowing," he said. "Meet her," April said, simply, like it was already decided, like there was already a future in which that happened. He looked at her. "You're very sure," he said. "One of us has to be," she said. "On the days you're not." He reached over and took her hand. She let him. They sat in the clinic waiting room in Atlanta on a Tuesday morning, and the city moved outside the window, and he thought about pepper jelly and rainy Saturdays and a market in Mangwon, and the specific accumulation of small things that had led to this moment, and felt something he had not felt in 15 years of building power and accumulating everything that power could buy. Grateful. Simply, completely, overwhelmingly grateful. "April," he said. "Young. I love you." She was quiet for a moment. "Then I know," she said. "I love you too." A pause. "Now let's go get lunch. The clinic food is terrible and you need to eat." He stood. She stood. They walked out into the Atlanta afternoon, and he felt, for the first time since a hospital corridor in Hanamdong, like a man with a future ahead of him rather than a countdown behind him. They came back to Seoul in the spring. The treatment continued remotely, monthly calls with Dr. Washington, a local monitoring protocol, numbers reviewed and adjusted with the ongoing precision of someone who had never believed a diagnosis was the final word. The trajectory held. Month by month the markers improved. The 6 months passed, and then 6 more, and Kwon Tae-yong was still here, changed in ways he was still discovering, quieter in some ways and more present in others, more himself than he had been in 15 years. He made April the face of his legitimate business holdings, not as a gift. He was clear about that with her and with himself. As a decision. She was the most capable person he knew, and he was done letting capable people operate invisibly inside structures that took credit for what they built. He gave her the role with the full weight of his endorsement, and then stepped back and let her do what she did, which was everything with the same directness and genuine care she brought to 12 jars and a folding table in a Mangwon market. She learned fast. She built relationships with the precision of someone who understood that real loyalty was cultivated, not commanded. She made decisions that surprised people who had expected her to be decorative and impressed people who had been watching carefully from the beginning. His family remained difficult. His mother did not capitulate. She was not a woman who capitulated. It was not in her construction. She adjusted, which was different. She was cooler with April than warmth required and warmer than hostility permitted. And April navigated the space between those two temperatures with a steadiness that earned, over time, something that was not quite respect from his mother, but was closer to it than anyone had predicted. His brother Taejin pushed back on April's decisions twice in the first month. Both times she was prepared, documentation, reasoning, the specific thoroughness of someone who had learned early that you walked into difficult rooms with everything you needed already in your hands. The second time Taejin pushed back, Taeyong was in the room. He said nothing. He did not need to say anything. April handled it herself, and the look on his face when she finished made it clear that no further pushing would be productive. Taejin did not push a third time. On a Saturday morning in April, the month, not the woman, though neither of them missed the coincidence, they went back to Mangwon. She didn't have the stall anymore. She had given it up when she took the business role, not without grief. She had grieved it properly, the specific loss of something small and entirely hers. But she had built something larger now that was also entirely hers, and the grief had made room for that. The neighborhood grandmother was still there, 2 stalls down from where April's had been, selling the same things she had always sold, unchanged by anything that had happened in the wider world. She saw April from 20 feet away and opened her arms and pulled her into a conversation that lasted 20 minutes and covered, as far as Taeyong could follow, her grandchildren, a recent health scare, the new family that had moved into the building on the corner, and a recipe dispute with her daughter-in-law that had apparently been ongoing since autumn. He stood slightly behind April and watched. He watched the way she moved through the market, the ease of her, the warmth, the complete absence of any performance of who she was or what she had become. The grandmother didn't know she was talking to the face of one of Seoul's largest legitimate business holdings. She was talking to April, the woman who used to sell pepper jelly 2 stalls down, and April was fully present for that conversation with the same attention she brought to boardrooms. He had known, on the first Saturday in this market, that she was different. He had not yet understood what different meant, had not had the frame for it. He had it now. She turned and found him watching. She said, "Nothing," he said. "Just looking." She walked back to him, took his hand the way she always took his hand, without ceremony, like it was simply the natural place for it to be. They walked. The market moved around them, the Saturday morning sounds and smells, the neighborhood grandmother's voice fatting behind them, the city doing its ordinary spring thing. He thought about the first morning he had come here. Plain clothes, hands in his pockets, a man running from the version of himself that the city knew, a diagnosis in a folder, 6 months, a life that had everything in it except the one thing that made everything else worth having. He had come to a market on a Saturday morning, and a woman had offered him a sample of her grandmother's pepper jelly and told him it would change his life. She had been right. She had been so completely right. If you made it to the end, thank you. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell and drop a comment below. See you in the next video.